really great. Great to be here. Great to see such a nice crowd. Great to see the enthusiasm. Some people thought the enthusiasm was going to die down after the primary.
No way!
But I think I'm on the record as saying it's only the beginning, folks. Now, it is very exciting. Big things are happening. The other day I wrote an article for the website and talked about a lot of big things happening. There are big things that are happening that are negative, but this is big too, and we have the answers to the problems that we have in this country. But it's obviously building. If your crisis is building, the other day, Bernanke and Paulson was before the committee. And, I made the point to them that the American people are upset. Everybody has problems. And the government hasn't even admitted there's a recession yet. But all they have to do is get out of this town and find out how American people are forced to live and what they're up against and what's going on in this country. Then they'll realize that we are not on the right track, and we know where the right track is, and that is to follow the Constitution. It's really been a great year. Of course, the year has ended in one way, sadly, with the loss of Kent. That has been a sad thing because, as I have said many times, Kent Snyder was the one that I knew closely, and he was the one that actually did the significant amount of arm twisting that finally had me make the final decision to get involved. So we will miss Kent, but he really did play a significant role. He was a friend, and he worked with me as far back as 1987. But we will carry on. The message is there, the organization is there, and the enthusiasm there, and obviously the need is there. That's the thing. They need our message. There were a lot of exciting things that happened. I think the reluctance I had a year and a half ago getting involved was not so much that I had the slightest doubt about the message. I've never had a doubt about the message of freedom and liberty and our Constitution. I had doubts whether I was to be the messenger and to lead this charge. Also, I didn't know how many belonged and still existed in our remnant. Our remnant is much bigger than we ever dreamed. But what about the enthusiasm of the young people and the campuses that come alive? Now, I don't do any measuring about the Main Street media, but I understand that they didn't give us the best shake, that sometimes we came up short. But what they didn't know about was, you 2 or 3 dozen spammers, how you could spread our message around the country. And all of a sudden, the message has been spread. One of the probably most interesting and entertaining events occurred early in the campaign when I think there was somebody else on the stage, I can't remember all their names. There were a total of 11, running. But I think he was the mayor of a big city. That's all I remember. But he was the one that called me on the carpet, and there was a lot of booing and hissing. Obviously, you people weren't in the crowd. But lo and behold, I remember that evening, I was a little uncertain what it meant. It really didn't disturb me that much because, I've had poor reception to a lot of my speeches over the years. But I remember a few minutes afterwards, Kent Snyder came up to me and he whispered, he said, guess what? You're winning in the post-debate polls. Days later, one of the mayor's supporters came to me on the House floor and wanted to rib me a bit. He says, I want to really thank you, Ron. He says, you really set my candidate up, and he really got the point in, and now, he was considered by the Main Street media as being the leading candidate. And so I said, in these last few days, it's pretty interesting that due to that confrontation, I probably got more attention in those 3 days than I had gotten in 30 years.
Yeah!
So that's what we can call a good unintended consequence of what people do. But no, the results have been fantastic. The response at the local level, at the student level. I can remember one of the early rallies occurred after the debate in Detroit, and that was we went over to the University of Michigan, and I knew we had tapped into something, and I finally realized that young people were listening, and they did care about and understood something about the Federal Reserve System. Meeting, I was very pleased. I got the applause when we went after the Fed, but what really fascinated me is when they started pulling out Federal Reserve notes and burning them. The ashes are going to be worth more than the paper. But the issues are coming into place. The two issues that I've worked on for so many years, now decades. First, it was the monetary issue associated with our economy and the business cycle. And then in the last decade or so, since we as Republicans have gone really downhill with the foreign policy has become a very important issue. So I have spent a lot of time on that, but the evidence is out there, and I think this is one of the reasons why there's such a strong response, especially with the young people, when they're realizing what they're inheriting. They're inheriting these problems and the debt and the entitlement system, and inheriting a war that should have never been fought in the first place. So one thing I do feel good about is the fact that we have been able to reach many libertarians, many conservatives, many constitutionalists that really didn't have much of a home, and they didn't feel like there were enough of them and us out there to really take the position to show that our side of the political spectrum can be opposed to war. And that should be our position. That's the constitutional position. And it's so easy to connect the problems with our foreign policy with our domestic economic problems. Because now, we as a nation have obligated ourselves to approximately $1 trillion a year to manage our empire. And it's money we don't have. It's money we tax the people, then we can't tax anymore. We borrow, we can't borrow anymore. Then, of course, the answer. Then they go to the Fed and they print a lot more money. Then they wonder why we have problems. It is so clear. Today, there's a lot of talk here on the Hill about solving our energy problems. And on our side of the aisle, they did pick up on one point. It's a reasonable point, but it's almost a distraction because they say, what we need to do to solve the energy crisis is drill, 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 and that's supposed to solve all the problems. Of course, drilling certainly could be helpful, and if we had more oil, it could play a role. But you have to look at the cost of energy and the cost of our gasoline from a different perspective. One, the value of the dollar. Yeah. The value of the dollar goes down when you print too many. When you have a foreign policy where you are motivated to do this, obviously, I'm going to the Middle East to protect our oil. It didn't work so well. Right now, it's so unstable, and with the threat that this war could spread, there's a risk premium put in there on a daily basis. So the foreign policy has pushed that cost of energy up. But then again, the value of the dollar goes down. But paying for the foreign policy in combination with the risk that we have involved, all the drilling in the world won't put, value back into the dollar. We need a sound political system, sound foreign policy, and sound financial system.